Welcome back, everybody, into Bill's Chat. I am Josh McCarty. With me, as always, is Luka. Luka, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. It's been, I think by the time this airs, if I'm doing my math correctly, it's going to be a month and a half since our last episode we put out. Could be even longer, could be less. I don't know. Just doing that right off the top of the head, but it has been a hot minute and hot indeed. It's been outside, and that's mainly the reason we've been gone away. Mostly you're doing, but not for bad reasons. And, it's good to be back in the chair, though, because next thing you know, Josh, we will be in the true deep part of it all and in the swing of things.
Yeah, June is a big travel month for me. I had 2 vacations, and then I had a work travel trip. I know you had some work travel going on, and we'd always touch base every week and be like, "Do you want to record?" But I think if the Bills had done something notable, like if they had signed Stephon Diggs, we would have made an episode happen. But now we're sitting here essentially 5 weeks from the beginning of training camp, and I think it's good for us to get back into the swing of things. And, it's very easy after the draft to kind of put the NFL aside for a bit, whether you're a soccer fan. The World Cup has been super entertaining. Whether you're a hockey or basketball fan, the finals of those two sports ended relatively recently. So it's been easy to kind of put the NFL in the back of your mind. And that's why I'm so excited about these next few episodes we're going to do, Luca, is it forces us to get right back in the swing of things with not just the Bills, but the teams that are going to impact the Bills this season, the Bills' opponents. So laying out the landscape for the next 4 episodes we're going to do, we are going to break down the Bills' opponents, beginning today with the Bills' AFC East opponents. And then from there, we'll break down the AFC South, or I'm sorry, the NFC, doing this top of my head, the AFC, it is the AFC, not the AFC South. It's the AFC West.
Bingo.
It's the NFC North.
There we go.
And then it's like a random mix of Rams, Texans, and Ravens.
Yep.
That'll be like the others. And then that'll get us to training camp. And I like that because when the schedule comes out, it's very easy to be like, man, this team looks tough. This team looks tough. But are they really a better version of the team we saw last year? And one thing I also want to point out, Luca, I think everybody listening to this show, you and I, whether we think that the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl this year or not, kind of irrelevant. I think we can all agree that that's the team's goal. The way they've built their roster, the way their quarterback is Josh Allen, the way it sounded this offseason where, put the ball down, let's play, the moves they made, bringing in veterans like Bradley Chubb and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, it was not a rebuild, it was a reload. The Bills' goal is to win the Super Bowl, as it should be anytime you have Josh Allen. Since 2000, you can do the math on it, it's 2026, there have only been 2 AFC champions that have gotten to the Super Bowl without winning their division. 2005 Steelers, 2006 Patriots. Otherwise, the avenue to going to the Super Bowl has come via being a division winner. Unfortunately, that includes last season, where the AFC East champion, New England Patriots, went to the Super Bowl. So I bring that up to say this is a very uber important conversation. It is important to figure out, was last year a blip, or have the Patriots really overtaken the Bills? How hard is this path going to be to the AFC East? And are the Jets and Dolphins 4 layups, or are we going to have another situation like last season where the Bills drop one of those 4 games and it ends up impacting them in the standings? All that being said, Luka, let's get down to it, and let's start with the team that dethroned the Bills last year, the New England Patriots.
Ooh.
To say they've had an exciting offseason would be an understatement. We know Mike Vrabel has his own issues going on off the field, but before we get into team roster building, on the field, where does Vrabel rank for you as head coaches go?
In the league, or at least just in the division?
Oh, I think in the division, it's Vrabel and everybody else.
All right.
Until Brady can prove otherwise.
Yeah, I would say Vrabel last season solidified himself in my eyes. I'm going to go top 6.
Mm-hmm.
That's without me truly having a list of the current head coaches right now in the NFL. I will say there's heavy turnover in the sense of long regimes no longer being there. Of course, the Bills being part of that situation with McDermott being gone, but you also have Tomlin and Harbaugh gone from their previous roles because, of course, Harbaugh is now with the Giants. That Harbaugh is. But I would say Vrabel, without truly looking at a list in front of me, going off the top of my head, last season, he's definitely top 6 in my opinion. I just think Vrabel is the ultimate football guy as a head coach who truly also understands how to generally get the most out of all players and positions, put them in places to succeed, make them confident as well as they're doing whatever their job is. And he's very much what I believe to be by far the most successful Belichick disciple, right? Like you think about Belichick disciples and honestly, most of it's hot garbage. But Vrabel seems to be the exception, with, I believe that being because he's an Ohio football guy. Like there's that thing where it almost feels genetic level to him, where that's what he was born to be. He understands the game at a very high level, knows how to dumb it down well as well in the dressing room, in the meeting rooms, all of that such. He has an entire roster understanding what's the job at hand. And then on game days itself, he truly grasps the entire picture. He knows what's needed. He knows all the little intricacies and things that need to happen to maximize whatever the situation calls for. You would never question Vrabel at this point on game days or anything that he's ever doing anything other than what's best for the team at that moment in time. And that's, I'm prefacing that absolutely with saying on the field, come Sundays or whenever their games are, that is the most important thing to him. And he fully is focused on that task at hand on game days. So I think it's, and you can correct me if you believe otherwise, but I would say top 6 is absolutely a spot he deserves to be at this moment.
Yeah, in my opinion, there's 3 above the rest. It's Andy Reid, it's Sean McVay, and it's Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
And then just kind of scrolling through in my brain, I think Vrabel's probably in that next wave where I would put a Kevin O'Connell, who we've now seen elevate, like Sam Darnold, to get him paid.
Yeah.
I would probably still put Sean Payton. I would. I think he's at least in the conversation. Just kind of thinking through coaches now. I like D'Amico Ryan's, not ready to put him there just yet. Nobody in the North, nobody else in the East. I'm not the biggest Harbaugh guy, admittedly. I don't think I ever really thought John Harbaugh, not either really. I think they're both good. I think they're both top 10. I don't think I'd put them both. I think I'd take Vrabel over both Harbaughs.
Yeah.
I like Dan Campbell a lot. To me, he's right there with Dan Campbell, where it's like, I don't think he's going to out X and O. Like, I don't think of him as McVay, where he's going to be a mad scientist and come up with this scheme that's going to really just throw you off. Maybe that is true. I mean, Dan Campbell found Ben Johnson. But I just think Mike Vrabel is a good leader of men. He's accountable. He's believable in front of the room. And I think he gets the most out of his players. And yeah, that's probably the list I'd have going through it. I'm sure there's a couple that I missed just kind of scrolling through. But let's talk about this Patriots team, because last year they finished with 14 wins, only 3 losses. They split with the Bills. Both games very close. Had the 3-point win here in Buffalo on Monday Night Football. The Bills' first home loss of the season, one of only 2 home losses, but then the Bills got them back in December with that massive comeback win in Gillette that felt massive at the time, because had the Patriots won that game, they would have had hats and t-shirts that day. And instead they had to put it off till the next week, and it kept the Bills alive in the division race. And it felt like a momentum game for the Bills in some respects. And then you look at what the Patriots did last season. And this is before they went out this offseason and got A.J. Brown and got Romeo Doubs. They were 3rd in the league in touchdowns scored. That surprised me. I want to make sure I'm looking. No, I'm on the right stat here. Total scoring. 3rd in the league in touchdown scores. They've had more touchdowns than the Bills, which also surprised me. They had 58 touchdowns total score. I lied. The Bills are 62. Bills are 2nd. So that I had it sorted wrong. They are 3rd, though. The Rams were 1st, if anybody's counting at home. I didn't think of the Patriots last year, Luka, as an overly explosive offense. Now, they look good at times, particularly against the Bills. And I do remember last season, the Patriots seemed to get really fat on bad teams. Like when they would play the Titans or the Jets, they would score nearly 50. So maybe that has something to do with it. But I come away thinking about some of the weapons they have on their team, what they did this offseason to address some of the other weapons, and really the leap we saw from Drake May that was an MVP runner-up type season. This team, who already scored the second most or the third most touchdowns in the sport, could get a lot better.
Yeah, they're young. That's the key of the offense when it comes to the Patriots. They are young. And then on top of it, they obviously go and get a talisman at wide receiver that should truly become kind of that thing they were missing in AJ Brown, which of course was also a kind of footnote as what led down a controversial path. But them doing that, and then don't overlook Romeo Doubs as well. You look at the receiving core, which was truly the one question mark, I guess you would say for the offense last year, even though they still succeeded. They were the second highest scoring offense in the sport as well. One of, I believe, 5 teams in the league that averaged over 4 touchdowns a game. They were second overall, just below the Rams in total points per game at 28.8. I would say dynamic wasn't the thing you would say though when you watched them. That's what you would say when you watched the Rams. Just obviously, since I just mentioned them, you watch the Rams, you're like, dynamic as all hell, can do whatever they feel like at times, so on and so forth. You never truly thought that was the case, mainly because of the receiver position at the time last season. But overall, even with them, if they were a full ground and pound, they were in control at all times. They understood what the game required, and they would execute at a high level, and they would be in control of things more likely than not. The only game I genuinely believe I can remember of the Patriots watching pretty much all of their games in some capacity that I felt they weren't in control is, ironically enough, that Bills game in their own home, where that second half happens and it felt like even McDaniels and Vrabel weren't quite able to grasp what the hell was happening on the field. And it was their offense that truly let them down. The defense, yes, the Bills were scoring a lot more in the second half, but the defense was just holding on. And all of us, because it's not as if the Bills offense, I think, was sputtering in the first half. They just weren't executing as much as they needed to. And then they finally were executing at a high level, and the Patriots offense just could not help them. They couldn't be, what they had been basically the rest of the season before and after. So you would expect, though, with now the receiver upgrades coming in, which are big ones, and then still having a guy like Demario Douglas there in the slot, they tried to beef up their offensive line situation, even with alligator arms out there at left tackle. But Vera Tucker in at left guard is a nice high-end potential addition. You got, of course, Rashmondre in the back there. It feels like a offense with Drake May at the helm that should absolutely develop further, elevate their game more. And I would think they have the absolute potential now to get into that conversation of dynamic offense, one of the most dynamic offenses in the league if everything goes well. They have a play caller, of course, that's well proven to be a high-end play caller with plenty of track record of that, just from a Patriots lens, as disgusting as it feels like to say, the sky is truly the limit for the offense, it feels like, at this moment in time on paper, sitting here as we record late June.
Now, it's not all bad. I will say, I feel like Sean McDermott kind of unlocked the key to shutting down Drake May, because if you look at what he did in the playoffs, despite the fact that they did win 3 playoff games to get to the Super Bowl, that was not the Drake May show. And you do wonder if maybe Sean McDermott in that second half unlocked something that could be the elixir to Drake May. And the other thing I think about is some of these first-year quarterbacks. I know it was Drake May's second year, but these breakout quarterbacks like C.J. Stroud, I'm thinking of Jaden Daniels, guys like that come in, take the league by storm, and that next year it's kind of a wake-up call. NFL defensive coordinators now have an entire year of film, not only on Drake May, but what Drake May does under Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel. So I do think that will help teams understand what they're doing. I liked the Elijah Vera Tucker signing. That was a guy I advocated for the Bills to get once I knew they were going to lose David Edwards, because I think it's a low risk, high reward potential signing. But there's also a real path to him not mattering at all for them because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. Finally, on the Patriots, the thing that I think makes them most dangerous, Luka, is they are a solid all-around football team. They were top 3 in points allowed last season as well.
Yeah.
And they added one of my favorite players of the last decade, Kevin Byard, to their secondary. I think he's going to just be, why are you laughing about Kevin Byard?
There's an internal thing about Kevin Byard that if whoever's listening is listening right now will understand why I just laughed the moment you said his name. But yeah, seeing him twice a year now on our screens in important situations, I'm going to tell you, so I don't mean to break this, but that is going to be an internal problem for me. And I swear to God, if Josh Allen throws him one effing ball, I'm going to lose my mind, because even with the Bills lens on, I absolutely am certain there will be voices being brought up saying certain things to me about Kevin effing Byard in my family room.
Well, you have that to look forward to. I think Kevin Byard now is on the back end of what I would say is one of the best secondaries in the entire sport. When you look at top 3 cornerbacks on a team, Christian Gonzalez, for my money, is in the conversation, right up there, not as proven, but right up there with guys like Derek Stingley and the top cornerbacks you think of in the sport. And then Carlton Davis is as good as you can get for a number 2 corner. And then Luka's draft crush, who he was begging the Bills to draft, like, hey, you want Terrence McGee 2.0, get this guy. And all he's done, Marcus Jones, has evolved into a high-end cornerback, an elite returner, ding, 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 Terrence McGee 2.0. And they have a good defensive line as well. Not a lot of weaknesses here. So let's get to the burning question here, Luka, because as we outlined at the beginning of this show, for the Bills to make it to the Super Bowl, you have a shot as a wild card. You got to win 3 road games, but ultimately you'd rather have playoff games in your building. How much of a threat are the Patriots, and are they more of a threat to the Bills this year than they were last year?
Ooh, love the second part of that question. So you would absolutely want playoff games at home, especially when you got a brand new one now you will be kicking off in this season. The Patriots, I would say threat meter on them for the division is a good 7.5 out of 10. I think I can't put them at 8. I think it, and I will say there's a weird way I'm going to answer that second part of this question. I would say that number is higher than what I would have said the Patriots were going into last season for the Bills when it came to threatening for the division. I would have probably said it was around 6 if we go back and maybe that conversation was on record. But overall, if we didn't have that conversation, I would have probably said it was around a 5 to 6. Because I am a Drake May person. I like him. I'm not overly in love with him, but I like him. I like him a lot. So I believe that he could progress and continue to excel. And I think they got a lot out of him, even with the receiving problems. But this year, I would say they're a legitimate 7.5 out of 10 threat, mainly due to that defense. They are the best 3 deep corner group in the sport right now. You highlighted them beautifully. I think their secondary is the best. If you go 5 deep on secondary, meaning 3 corners if you're nickel, and then the safety group, they are probably the best secondary overall in the sport as well. Craig Woodson at strong safe is a phenomenal player himself. And Kevin Byard is Kevin Byard. He's still a quality free safety in this league. He's good. He's getting older. He'll be 33 in this season, but he's still a good player, and that's all I'll say. So I think that's good. I think their defensive line got better. I think Harold Landry is still a quality player in this league. He is 30 at the moment, but defensive linemen, I think, easily can still be high-end guys. And at their best at 30 years old, it's not quite yet where age starts to regress you. I think their defense is what's going to make them a legitimate problem for the Bills more than the offense by far. And the key of that, though, is if you come at the Bills and your defense is probably your greater strength than the offense, we have the ultimate neutralizer. And that's where I think I can't quite get to the 8 or 9 out of 10 when it comes to a division threat, just because Josh Allen is Josh mother effing Allen. So it's just, I think they're great. And then the caveat too, to me saying like, hey, my threat meter is higher this year than I would have probably put him at this time last year for the Patriots. I'm going to say the caveat of it all is I think they're less of a threat this year than last year when you take the whole picture in, because I look at the Patriots schedule And I'm not going to be sitting here saying they had a cupcake schedule last year and that's the big difference, but the facts are facts. And this year, their starting situation is wild. They are at the Seahawks, of course, on the league opener. They are then home for the Steelers, which will be a very intriguing game with new leadership there now and everything going on there. And the Steelers are notorious for being an early season going kind of team. And then at the Jaguars, at the Bills, that opening four can truly set the tone for their season. And it's not, I'm not the biggest Jaguars person, but it's not out of the realm of possible that in there they start 1-3. Like that's not crazy talk. And if you start the season 1-3, I mean, you're in the hole. Now you're in it. They do get some layups there with the Raiders and the Jets, but then you're at the Bears on Thursday Night Football. You have the Packers on your schedule so we'll see you there. You have the Lions. Those are both home games, but you have them on your schedule. You have to go to LA to play the Chargers. You have to go to Arrowhead late in the season. Mahomes will be at full effect by that point, you would imagine. You have the Broncos on your schedule again at home. You have the Bills, of course, once again on your schedule at home. Vikings, I would say, are the true wild card on their schedule. Who the hell knows what the hell is going to happen out there? I respect their coach a shit ton, but also when it's a battle between Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy for under center, boom, the sky or floor is the limit on that one. So I think just their path overall to getting to, let's say, I think division winner is very difficult to do at 11 wins. So 12 wins is kind of that starting spot, I think, for a division winner. 12 wins, if you start 1-3, is a very difficult number to get to considering what else you have down the line. And so they need to be ready to go early on, which I expect we're able to have them ready to go for the most part, but those are no layups by any rhyme or reason. And I think ultimately their schedule now being ramped up this season considerably is definitely going to be one that has more hiccups in it for them that may bite them in the ass come, December time and they're fighting for the division and maybe a game or two back.
I like the schedule point a lot. They are playing a first place schedule, which that does impact your season. And then, for those that don't know, the Bills and Patriots are going to play largely the same schedule. I have 3 quick questions for you. You may not even know why I'm asking this, but just off the top of your head, who's a better football team, the Rams or the Seahawks this year?
Okay, say that again.
Who's a better football team, the Rams or the Seahawks this season? Who do you like better? And if it's a tie, you can just say tie. Rams. Texans or Jaguars?
Who? Honestly, Texans?
Ravens or Steelers?
Ravens.
So the only difference between the Bills schedule and the Patriots schedule are the 6 teams I just mentioned.
Yeah.
The 3 that Luka chose are the 3 that are on the Bills schedule. So they have a first place schedule, but in all the cases now, Seattle and Rams might be splitting hairs. Give me the team that doesn't have Myles Garrett and Sean McVay though. But I think my overall point was, if you want to hear that at first place schedule, it's really going to come down to those 2 games where they play each other. I am going to predict that the Bills win the division. Right now, the betting market says that the Bills are favored to win the division. They're a slight favorite. According to FanDuel, the Bills are -135. The Patriots are +130, obviously, in second. And then in the overall AFC landscape, the Bills are tied with the Ravens at the best odds. Boy, it's like these people don't even care that last season happened. The Bills are tied with the Ravens at +500. And then the Patriots are tied with a group of 3 teams, the Chargers and the Chiefs at +800, and then Texans and then Bengals. And I don't even see the team listed yet that the Bills ended up losing to in the playoffs. So that's interesting. But that just, take it for what it's worth. It's just information at this point. It doesn't have to mean anything. We all know that the games are going to be decided on the field. Also, we're not going to be spending as much time on the Dolphins and Jets as we are the Patriots. I think we can all agree that while we've seen a lot of things unexpected in this sport, the Patriots not being the biggest threat to the Bills in this division would be a very massive surprise. Yeah. Luka, it's been interesting for the Jets this offseason.
All right.
I actually forgot to look this up ahead of time. You might know this as a Sabres fan. How many years is their playoff drought?
They are now entering the 15th season, I believe it would be.
So they are one more season away from being able to drive the drought. Their season, they need 3 more non-playoffs droughts, 15, 16, 17, to catch the Bills' 17-year drought. And I don't know about you, but nothing I have seen from the Jets this offseason tells me that this is going to be the year they solve it. We're going to get into some of the moves they've made this offseason. I thought they had an interesting draft. They ended up with 3 first-round picks because they had the 2 from some of the trades they made last season where they traded away Sauce Gardner, they traded away Quinnen Williams. You have to factor that in when you start looking at, oh, wow, they had 3 first-round picks. Yeah, but are any of those players as good as the ones they lost?
Right.
And I'm just very confused by what the Jets are trying to accomplish. And if it seems like, oh, he's just bashing on the AFC East team, I'll tell you, when we get to the Dolphins, there's a lot that they do where I think they're being realistic with where they are in their rebuild. And I think they're taking a longer view. And I think that is how I would want my team to act. I think the Jets are acting way too much like the Bills did during their 17-year drought, where they are just trying to piece it together, bubble gum, scotch tape, whatever they can to get that playoff drought off their back. When I think that if they just allowed themselves to go to the bottom, particularly this year, where the draft class is so loaded coming up, it would be better. They might wind up at the bottom anyway because they're that bad. But some of the moves they did this offseason, one, firing both coordinators and then bringing in Frank Reich as offensive coordinator and Brian Duker as defensive coordinator, feels like Aaron Glenn went full self-preservation mode. Trading for Geno Smith after the way he looked at for the Raiders last season, but instead of using these very valuable 17 games to evaluate a young quarterback on the roster, I do expect some of the young quarterbacks in the Jets will get some playing time, but Geno Smith, every snap he takes is wasted experience, in my opinion. And then trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick. What are we doing, Jets? What are we trying to accomplish with all these moves? There's nothing the Jets have done this offseason. I did mention their draft. Let's talk really quickly about their 3 first-round picks. David Bailey, the second pick in the draft, edge rusher. Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Oregon. I think he's going to be a little bit of a slow starter. I think he's going to be a good weapon for them down the line. And then Omar Cooper Jr., just not exactly my favorite receiver in the draft. I know the Jets were enamored with him. He should pair well with Garrett Wilson. But Luka, I mean, we're going to talk about the Jets as much as we need to, but I think this is a team where a coach is going to definitely be on the hot seat. If it starts going south, he's the first name I think of as first coach fired. And Geno Smith showed me nothing last year to make me think that he's going to pull this thing out of the fire. And he's having an interesting offseason as well, off the field. I think this is not a threat to the Bills. And holy cow, Bills, if you lose a game to this team, we have some big problems.
Yeah. So I love your point about them feeling like, a Sabres trade just happened as we're conversating. Smaller trade, so we don't have to break it.
What was it?
Just they traded for Olin Zellweger, a defenseman. As it seems like a Bowen Byram light style player, bring him in, potentially replaces him, though it's another lefty. But so it's like, can we get righties? Although I know those are unicorns, quality right-handed defensemen. Back to Bills or Jets, technically. So your point about the Jets being kind of Bills drought feeling in the sense of band-aiding, scotch tape, doing all this to patch it together to see if you can do something. My mind immediately, when you think of like the specifically Minkah Fitzpatrick trade to put him in there at safety and stuff like that, while also adding Kenyon Sadiq, David Bailey, and Omar Cooper Jr. By the way, 3 players that I actually have a upward trend on when it comes to liking them as a player going into their NFL careers. I thought in the draft, those are 3 players that I think were worthy of their first round grades. Although Cooper, you could debate, but ultimately it was a back end first anyways. I think that was a good pick. And I think those are quality players to come into any NFL organization. So for the Jets, hopefully it works out for them. For the Bills' sake, hopefully not. But what I felt like with that situation, Minkah trade, but then also these 3 picks and stuff, it feels like they're trying to skip the line when it comes to getting back to competitive football. And in any sport for that matter, as a Sabres fan, as anyone that understands long rebuilds and long droughts, as any Bills fan understands, skipping the line or attempting to do so generally doesn't work. And it actually normally goes down in flames, right? Like you need to go through the process that feels like it takes forever, but as long as everyone's on board and understands from ownership all the way down what the job is at hand, what the vision is, all of these things, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You need to understand that, whether it's a 2-year process, 4-year process, 5-year process, 14-year process, 17-year process, whatever it is, like you have to just make sure at an organizational level, everyone understands what the job at hand is and what the expectations are and be realistic. It's a point as we get into the Dolphins later on that I think is very valid with them where it's like, hey, we're realistic about what's going on. The Malik Willis situation might be a little suspect, but they are realistic as to what's going on, and it feels like they're maybe taking the more appropriate approach to it if you compare it to the Jets who we're talking about right now. The Jets feel like they're like, we have a couple guys we don't want to disrespect. Garrett Wilson, we want to make sure he's happy. Breece Hall, we just signed to an extension for whatever reason. We want to make sure he's happy. They're part of the quote-unquote old regime. Why do you have any respect for the old regime if you're in a rebuild, which is realistically what you are? F them. Like you need to do what's best for the organization. And if you are trying to skip the line and try to just burst your way through just because it feels like the opportunity's there, more likely than not, it's going to blow up in your face. And then you're actually going to create more issues. And as you said, that will put the coach front and center on the hot seat, which I don't have a lot of respect for that coach anyways in the first place. That I would say my expectation for this team, 99 out of 100, 99% expectation is there's going to be serious problems quickly, and Aaron Glenn will be without a job. I don't think you can bet this in New York State, but I know there's like always a first coach fired bet. We'll probably have this conversation on our season projection. Spoiler alert to anyone that would want to wait for that. Aaron Glenn would be top of my list, and I imagine the betting favorite to be in first coach fired because it just absolutely reeks as a recipe for disaster with the Jets in the sense of just going wrong, and you can't fast track a rebuild. It just doesn't ever work in any sport with any organization. No matter what you're trying to do, you cannot fast track it. It is almost borderline impossible unless you somehow, in football terms, trip yourself into the next generational quarterback that instantly propels you to having a top 3 guy the moment he steps on the field. Nothing else matters. And the problem for the Jets is their biggest problem and question mark and issue is the quarterback. It's a guy who's notorious for getting teams a first overall pick. If that was part of the design, great. But also that should mean everyone's safe. And I bet you that's not the case. So yeah, it's a true dumpster fire out there for the Jets.
And what have we learned in recent years in football? There's really 2 ways to get that quarterback position settled. One, you get a unicorn like a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, a Joe Burrow, you're just fine. The other way that I think teams have really started to understand is if you get yourself an elite play caller, you can find a career average quarterback and have his game elevated. Look what Clint Kubiak did with Sam Darnold after he spent a year with Kevin O'Connell. Look what Ben Johnson did with Jared Goff. Look at the leap that Caleb Williams took with Ben Johnson. So you can see some of those examples throughout the league, but then you look at the Jets and who's the highest ranking offensive mind in that building? It's Frank Reich. All due respect to Frank Reich. He's a Bills legend. For many people listening to this podcast, Frank Reich authored maybe the most exciting day of their Bills fandom with the comeback game. But I don't know if anybody thinks of him in the same world as the Ben Johnsons and Sean McVays and Kyle Shanahans. One thing I know about Frank Reich is he can coach up your running game. And when you look at what the Jets have done in the draft in recent years, I do like their offensive line. They've spent 2 first-round picks on Fashanu and Mimbo, and they spent a second-round pick on Joe Pittman. They obviously decided to keep Breece Hall instead of letting him go for a third-round pick or a fourth-round pick. And I think that all adds up to, with Frank Reich as their coordinator, the Jets are going to be that team that runs the ball down your throat and tries to shorten the game, have long possessions, keep it close, and invite fluke into it. And they're going to steal some games from teams that they don't think they should be, or that teams that they don't think should be losing to the Jets. You just have to hope the Bills aren't one of those teams. But the other side of that coin is, are they going to steal enough games that they knock themselves out of the top 5 pick that could be a gold mine this year. I don't like the way it's building. I do think their GM is savvy, though. I do like the trades he made last year where he traded away Sauce Gardner and didn't just get first-round picks, but he took a flyer on an AD Mitchell, a young player that needed to change the scenery, and did well for himself. They traded away Quinn Williams to the Cowboys. I'm blanking on the defensive tackle, Mozzie Smith, that they got back. Another first-round pick that didn't do anything in Dallas, but hey, take a flyer on a guy. I like that. So I think their GM might be fairly sharp, but they got to get a different coach than Aaron Glenn. We saw in week 2 against the Bills just how cowardly he was with some of his punting and lack of courage on 4th downs. And I feel like I guess I'll go ahead and ask you, scale of 1 to 10, how much threat are the Jets? I'm going with 0.5.
-20.
Okay. You might be a little too high there. All right. Let's talk about the Miami Dolphins, because the Miami Dolphins have really been a thorn in the side of the Bills, even in this Josh Allen era. And I know the stats for Josh Allen against the Dolphins are alarming. He's won numerous numerous Player of the Week awards against the Dolphins. He won the AFC Championship game a couple years ago down in Florida. They have a victory in the playoffs against the Dolphins. But it does seem like, whether it's the extremely hot game down in Miami, I think week 3, a couple years ago, 2022, and then last year, just the game that nobody could make any sense of, where the Dolphins boat raced the Bills in Miami. And then you start thinking like, man, and the Bills got kind of lucky to beat them on Thursday Night Football. Speed for days. And so much of what I thought made the Dolphins scary these last few years, Luka, honestly, was Mike McDaniel. I think as an offensive play caller, he's in the same conversation as a Kyle Shanahan. I think as a guy running the show is where he loses the Kyle Shanahan comparison. I don't think he's a great leader of men. I don't think he overrules himself as, hey, we're running it down their throat, but I'd really like to try passing right now. He's done that so many times against the Bills where they're breaking off 8-yard runs at a clip, and then they throw it and they take a sack and the drive's over. All that's to say is these Dolphins are going to look a lot different this year. Mike McDaniel out. Tua out. Jalen Waddle out, traded to Denver. We'll get to him later in this series, a couple of weeks from now maybe. And then Tyreek Hill, free agent. Last season, Jalen Phillips traded away. Minka Fitzpatrick traded away. Bradley Chubb, now he's a Bill. This is a team that has absolutely ripped their roster down to the studs. And I don't mean studs in the sports sense. I mean studs in the building a house and you rip it down to the studs. And when you look at what the Dolphins did, they brought in Jeff Hafley, who was the defensive coordinator in Green Bay. And he's promoted Bobby Slowick to offensive coordinator. I didn't love that hire, but Hafley brought with him Malik Willis, who I think is an interesting lotto ticket at quarterback. Luka's going to get into some of the weapons he has to throw to in Miami that maybe aren't going to give him the best chance to be evaluated. But at least he gets a shot now to start. I know Malik Willis was a guy that you liked a lot in the draft, and maybe he didn't get the best landing spot in Tennessee, but boy, when he got a shot to play in Green Bay, he really flourished and got himself paid. So I know there will be a part of you that's rooting for him to have success this year. But this is a team that I think all eyes are already on 2027. And it's really just about getting through this season while learning about Malik Willis and some of these young players that they got in the draft. What do you think about these 2026 Dolphins?
They're worse. Is whatever it is it is. I mean, that's not a surprise. That's not breaking news to anyone. I'll get into the absolute bona fide reason why, or at least just why I believe that they're a -19 threat to the Bills. They're doing it the right way, though. I want to start with the caveat. They, in my opinion, just like we talked about the Jets doing it potentially in what feels like the wrong way to completely rebuild and restructure an organization after sputtering for so long, the Dolphins are in a similar situation where, yes, they've even made the playoffs when they were in the McDaniel era, but also they still had They're the longest drought, I believe, without a playoff win. And that's the thing that Dolphins fans circle about. So ultimately, they're in their own kind of drought situation and just need to correct this and figure it out. And they understand that they needed to rip it down truly to the foundation and studs and try to restructure and rebuild from there. I think the Malik Willis move is the only one where I somewhat question the full structure of it. It felt like it's premature, but if the opportunity presents it, I mean, Malik Willis is a promising guy. It felt after seeing what he was in a better situation up in Green Bay when given the opportunity, but he's also 27 years old. So if you were to turn this around, let's say in 3 seasons, he will be 30. Quarterbacks, you can get generally a little bit older and stuff like that. But Malik Willis, I do have my questions on if he's one of the guys I would bank on being still a quality starter, let's say 35 plus. So you're shortening that window if he becomes your guy. That's the only question mark or strangeness I have to it. This year, though, will be a true growing pain year. I would not be surprised if their attendance overall in the season is under 25% filled at home. If you exclude away fans showing up, like the Bills fans will probably be there, and any other larger fan base, traveling roadshow will be there. But the roster is bare. It's barren. There's not a lot to be excited about. They have their first round pick from last year, Chop Robinson. Hopefully coming. I think he was hurt at the tail end of last year. Hopefully he's back and good. Kenneth Grant as well should be back. They have Joshua Uche. He should be intriguing for them. They have some guys who will be intriguing and interesting, but their offensive line is the worst in the division by a mile. It might be one of the worst in the leagues. And that's crazy to say considering they have potentially the best center in the sport, Aaron Brewer. But overall, it's just not a good line at all. That's big red flag number one. Their secondary is interesting. They're one of their top dogs is going to be what felt like a little bit of a reach in the first round this year, and Chris Johnson, the corner out of San Diego State. But overall, when it comes down to it, you expect a team of this situation with Malik Willis probably being down a lot in games and needing to climb back if they expect to win anything, and you need to be throwing the ball to do so. And that's where the problem really lays with this team. You go from Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, maybe one of the best duos of wide receiver on a team in the sport, by far the fastest duo in the sport. And you're going to Tutu Atwell, Jalen Tolbert, and promising Malik Washington in the slot. You are not going to be successful in climbing back into games with that kind of receiving core. Just the bottom line. They did draft Chris Bell in the 3rd round. He's probably their highest ceiling receiver on the roster. I think Chris Bell is a promising talent. He dropped to the 3rd round. If fully healthy and everything was okay, I know some projected him to be a potential late 1st round guy, depending on the year. So I know I had him in my like category. So that will be interesting. But the Dolphins are this is the down to the studs, accept your losing year, eat your vegetables. We need to assess the team for what it is even further, and we will start to fill the holes with young talent after the season, especially with the draft coming up. And I will say the one thing that even promotes the idea of Malik Willis being your quarterback is it's a younger, 27 is not young, but younger quarterback that if he works out and you like everything you see out of him and what feels like coming up a very quarterback heavy draft, if you're a high pick, that becomes an extremely valuable pick to someone else potentially. And that is where then you could really start to ramp up. So the Dolphins could be in a position where you accept your failures for this year, you accept your losing. And if you get into a position going into the draft next year where you don't need a quarterback and you are sitting there at a very premium spot, you could be reaping incredible rewards come the draft of 27. And I think that's where, if you were to ask me what fans should be more excited about the future when it comes to either the Jets or the Dolphins, I find it very difficult in my eyes right now to say I think it's more promising for the Dolphins in 5 years' time to be a competitive team right now than it is the Jets. It feels crazy to say because I think the Jets currently on their roster right now have obviously 3 first-round picks that we don't know, and they could all work out incredibly for them, so on and so forth. But I just think the way they're rebuilding, the way you're going about it, as we talked about before, is all wrong. And I find it more likely than not that it explodes in their face. Whereas the Dolphins, it feels like there's a lot more promise laid out in front of them and potential for success laid out in front of them for in years to come. Not right now, and it'll be probably even more ugly than the Jets this season in my eyes. But I think that's by design, and I think that's accepted at an organizational level. And overall, there's a lot of positive for them moving forward.
Last week, Bill Barnwell from ESPN put out an article where he ranked all 32 teams' weapons around their quarterbacks. The Dolphins ranked 32nd.
Yeah.
Want to guess where the Bills ranked?
29th.
29th.
Holy shit, really?
29th. I think that's a little harsh.
I think that's harsh too, but also I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it includes tight end and running back. So I'm like, wow, James Cook and Dalton Kincaid and Knox don't push it a little bit, and Shakir's okay. And
DJ Moore.
I don't think nationally people are enamored with DJ Moore. Candidly, I'm not enamored with DJ Moore, but I think he's better than what they had last year. We have plenty of time to talk about DJ Moore, though. All right. So that's a look at that. I mean, Dolphins fear factor, I'm again 0.5.
-19.
Okay. So here we are. It's Bills, it's Patriots. Which team stays healthier and which team can win those head-to-head games. And we'll see which team wins the division, because it seems like that's the path to making it to the ultimate goal, which is the Super Bowl. All right, Luka, our ultimate goal is to put out another episode next week, and we're going to see to it that happens, because we are back. It is almost training camp season, which means you're going to get so much of myself and Luka weekly, and then pretty soon the live shows are going to start up again, and halftime shows, and before you know it, every Sunday is going to be a stress test until you ultimately find out whether the Bills are going to have you in a great mood or a mad mood the rest of the day. Love this time of year. Don't want to wish summer away, but I love fall. Luka, before we get out of here, how much of a shot does USA have?
Ooh, shot to win it all is very low, but I would say there's a realistic goal, I think, for quarterfinals of the World Cup. I think the hope was that originally going into it, and I think what we saw, even with a loss to Turkey from recording right now, it was last night. I think even with that loss, you accept it for what it is, because there was so much rotation that you feel more promising, as well as the path to getting to the quarterfinals is hella easier than you expected it to be. For one reason, Belgium is hot dog shit right now, so you're not going to have to go through them most likely. And your alternatives in that case would then be most likely Egypt, but even potentially Iran. As we're recording this right now, that's unknown. You will know by the time you are listening if you're sitting there Monday morning or Sunday night, depending on whenever I decide to hit send on this thing. It'll be intriguing to see what happens in the round of 32 against Bosnia on Wednesday the 1st. And then from there, you're playing the winner of most likely, I think it's like Egypt/Iran, and then South Korea, who's been a massive disappointment overall in this tournament. So it's definitely in the realm of possible to get to the quarters, which then from there, if you're in the quarters, you're playing most likely, if favorites win, you're playing Spain. And that's where, now you got to feel like you're playing with house money, pun intended, since it is in the US, but Spain is Spain for a reason. Cape Verde could hold them to a draw. If the US was able to hold Spain to a draw all the way through extra time and get to PKs, buttholes puckered tight, that would be electric, but also crazy in its own right. I think quarterfinals, though, is a realistic and hopeful expectation for this team right now, as long as no injuries occur. But realistically, it's just going to be a lot of fun to hopefully get a couple knockout rounds in and really see this team go on a run at home with a lot of good vibes. I mean, as we're recording right now, it was reported that the U.S. reached out to Pochettino for an extension, and that's exciting because that would be awesome. I don't think that's realistic. I think Pochettino is going to use this run, hopeful, to propel himself back into the big boy clubs, which he deserves a potential another look for, because I do think he's a quality manager. He's great with players overall. You can see what he's doing with this squad. It's exciting. It's a lot of fun. I know you're even getting more into soccer now that you have a little bit of coaching background going on it yourself. I think quarterfinals is a hopeful expectation. But overall, they're going to most likely get through Bosnia. And then that round of 16 knockout game is probably one of the more favorable ones for any nation that, enjoy the ride, folks. Enjoy the ride.
I used to play soccer, and I enjoy watching soccer. I actually had an Iranian soccer coach once.
Oh, wow.
He made us all do laps after practice. Guess what I did?
Not laps?
I ran.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Yeah.
We're back. All right. Speaking of we're back, we will be back next week with another look at some upcoming opponents for these Buffalo Bills. We hope you enjoyed this AFC East breakdown. For Luka, I am Josh McCarty. We will talk to you next week on Bills Chat.